I'm Captain Sabrina Lewis, 37 years old, U.S. Air Force. I came from a house where nothing I did was ever enough, but I turned that into a career leading teams who trust me with their lives. For years, I sent money home, covered bills, and kept showing up for a father who never once showed up for me. But on my wedding day, when he laughed out loud during my vows and mocked me in front of everyone, I made a choice that changed everything. Have you ever been humiliated by the very person you sacrificed the most for? If so, drop your story in the comments. You're not alone. Before I get into what happened, tell me where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to stand your ground against someone who tried to tear you down, hit like and subscribe for more true stories about setting boundaries and reclaiming your worth. What happened next might surprise you. I've been carrying my father's voice in my head for as long as I can remember. Not the kind that lifts you up or makes you feel seen, the kind that reminds you over and over that you're not quite enough. That no matter what you do, it'll never be the right thing. I'm Captain Sabrina Lewis, U.S. Air Force, and I've spent most of my life trying to prove something to a man who decided long ago that I wasn't worth the effort. My father, Gerald Lewis, was the kind of man who could make a compliment feel like an insult. Sharp-tongued, quick with a cutting remark, always more concerned about what the neighbors thought than what his own daughter needed. My mother, Patricia, learned early on to smooth over his edges, to laugh when he made a joke at someone's expense, to redirect conversations before they turned into arguments. She became an expert at keeping the peace, even when peace meant silence. Growing up, I learned to read the room before I entered it. I learned to make myself smaller, quieter, less of a target. But I also learned that no amount of good behavior would ever be good enough. I brought home straight A's, and he'd ask why I wasn't valedictorian. I made the varsity track team, and he'd say I should have focused on something more practical. When I told him I'd earned a full scholarship to the Air Force Academy, he shrugged and said, "Well, at least it's free." I stopped expecting praise. I stopped expecting much of anything. But I didn't stop trying. I told myself that if I just worked hard enough, accomplished enough, proved myself enough, maybe he'd see me differently. Maybe he'd be proud. So I joined the Air Force. I excelled in training. I pushed myself harder than anyone around me, not because I loved the work, though I did, but sent money home when they needed it. I paid off debts. I covered car repairs, medical bills, property taxes. I didn't do it because I expected gratitude, I did it because that's what you do for family. But every check I sent felt like another attempt to buy something I knew I'd never get. And every time he cashed it without a word, I felt a little more foolish for trying. My mother never said anything. She'd thank me quietly in private, but she never stood up to him. Never told him to stop. I used to resent her for that. But over time, I realized she was just as worn down as I was. She'd spent decades trying to manage his moods, trying to keep the family together, and somewhere along the way, she'd lost the ability to push back. Or maybe she'd never had it to begin with. I met Ethan Ward 3 years ago at a joint training exercise. He was a logistics coordinator, calm and steady in a way that felt foreign to me. He didn't try to impress anyone. He didn't need to prove himself. He just did his job well and treated people with respect. We started talking during a late shift, and I was surprised by how easy it was. How he listened without interrupting. How he asked questions that showed he actually cared about the answers. We kept in touch after the exercise ended. Emails at first, then calls, then visits whenever we could manage them. Ethan never made me feel like I had to be anything other than who I was. He didn't need me to be smaller or quieter or more accommodating. He didn't expect me to carry everything on my own. He just wanted to be there, beside me, as an equal. When he proposed, I said yes without hesitation. Not because I needed to be saved or because I was looking for an escape, but because I wanted to build something with him. Something that didn't require me to constantly prove my worth. I told my parents about the engagement over dinner. My mother's face lit up. She hugged me, asked to see the ring, started talking about dates and venues and guest lists. My father barely looked up from his plate. "So you're really doing this," he said. "Yes," I said. "We are." He set down his fork and leaned back in his chair, studying me with that familiar expression, half amusement, half disdain. "You sure he knows what he's getting into?" My mother shot him a look, but he ignored her. Ethan's a good man, I said carefully. He's thoughtful. He's dependable. He respects what I do. Respectful, my father repeated, like the word tasted sour. That's what you're going for. Safe and respectful. Yes, I said. That's exactly what I'm going for. He shrugged. Suit yourself. Just seems like you could do better. Find someone with a little more ambition. Someone who stands out. Ethan, sitting beside me, didn't flinch. He just reached over and took my hand under the table, his grip steady and reassuring. I squeezed back. I'm not looking for someone who stands out, I said. I'm looking for someone who sees me. And he does. My father smirked. Well, good luck with that. That was it. No congratulations. No well wishes. Just dismissal, wrapped in sarcasm, delivered with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. My mother tried to salvage the moment, asking about the wedding, offering to help with planning. But the damage was done. I left that dinner feeling the same way I always did after spending time with my father, like I'd been weighed and found wanting. Ethan didn't say much on the drive home. But when we got back to my apartment, he turned to me and said, "You know he's wrong, right?" I nodded. I know. I mean it, Sabrina. You're not asking for too much. You're not settling. You're allowed to want someone who treats you well. I know, I said again. And I did know. But knowing didn't make it hurt any less. We started planning the wedding. My mother threw herself into it, excited and eager to help. My father stayed on the sidelines, making occasional comments about costs or guest lists or how we should keep things simple. He didn't offer to contribute financially, which didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was how little I cared. I'd stopped expecting him to show up for me a long time ago. Ethan and I wanted something meaningful but not extravagant. We chose a venue that felt personal, invited people who mattered to us, and kept the ceremony simple. My squadron would be there, people I'd served with, people I trusted. That mattered more to me than anything else. The weeks leading up to the wedding were busy. I was juggling work commitments, finalizing details, trying to stay present while my mind raced through 1,000 logistics. Ethan kept me grounded. He reminded me that the day wasn't about perfection. It was about us. About stepping into something new together. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe that my father's voice didn't matter anymore. That I'd moved past needing his approval. But part of me still hoped that on the day itself, he'd surprise me. That he'd stand up and say something kind. That he'd see me the way Ethan did, the way my squadron did, and recognize that I was worth celebrating. I should have known better. The warning signs were always there. I just didn't want to see them. Or maybe I saw them and convinced myself they didn't matter. That if I ignored them long enough, they'd fade. That my father would eventually come around. But he didn't. He never did. When Ethan and I started wedding planning in earnest, my father made his opinions clear. He didn't like the venue, said it was too formal. He didn't like the guest list, said we were inviting too many military people. He didn't like the menu, the music, the timeline. Nothing was right. And when my mother gently suggested that maybe we should just let us handle it, he'd snap at her and say he was only trying to help. But it wasn't help. It was control. It was his way of reminding me that even on my own wedding day, I wasn't allowed to make decisions without his commentary. Ethan noticed. He always noticed. One evening, after a particularly tense phone call with my parents, he set down his tablet and looked at me. "Why do you let him talk to you like that?" I shrugged. "That's just how he is." "That doesn't make it okay." "I know," I said. "But I can't change him. I've tried. For years, I've tried. It doesn't work." Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You don't have to change him. But you also don't have to keep giving him chances to hurt you." I wanted to argue. To defend my father, to make excuses, to explain that he didn't mean it the way it sounded. But I couldn't. Because Ethan was right. My father knew exactly what he was doing. He'd been doing it my entire life. The comments about Ethan escalated as the wedding drew closer. My father started calling him ordinary. He'd say things like, "You sure he's the one? Seems a little plain to me." Or, "I thought you'd end up with someone more impressive. Someone with a little more fire." It was deliberate. Every word chosen to plant doubt, to make me second guess, to remind me that in his eyes, I'd never make the right choice. And the worst part was that his friends, his drinking buddies, his golf crew, encouraged it. They'd laugh when he made those comments. They'd nod along, adding their own jabs about young people settling too early or not knowing what they really wanted. My mother would sit there, quiet and uncomfortable, occasionally offering a weak, "Gerald, that's enough." But it was never enough to stop him. And it was never enough to make me feel defended. I tried to brush it off, told myself it didn't matter what he thought, that Ethan and I were solid and no amount of mockery could change that. But it wore on me. Late at night, when I couldn't sleep, I'd replay those conversations in my head. I'd wonder if maybe my father was right. If maybe I was settling. If maybe I'd chosen safety over passion because I was too scared to reach for something more. Then Ethan would reach over in the dark, half asleep, and pull me closer. And I'd remember that this was what I wanted. Not drama. Not chaos. Not someone who made me feel like I had to earn their affection every single day. Just this. Just him. Just us. My father also made a habit of downplaying my career. At family gatherings, he'd introduce me with a smirk and say, "This is Sabrina, my daughter. She's in the Air Force. Mostly paperwork, from what I understand." People would chuckle, and I'd stand there, smiling tightly, pretending it didn't sting. But it did sting. Because I wasn't just shuffling papers. I was leading a team. I was making decisions that mattered. I was responsible for people's safety, for mission success, for upholding something bigger than myself. And he reduced it all to a punchline. Ethan witnessed one of those moments at a family barbecue a few months before the wedding. My father was holding court with his buddies, beer in hand, telling some exaggerated story about his own younger days. When I walked over to grab a drink, he flagged me down. "Hey, everyone, meet my daughter." The one in uniform. "She's a big deal, apparently." His friends glanced at me with polite interest, and one of them asked, "What do you do in the Air Force?" Before I could answer, my father cut in. "She sits behind a desk. Sends emails. Very important emails." The group laughed. I forced a smile and excused myself. Ethan followed me inside. "That was bullshit," he said quietly. "It's fine." "No, it's not. He does that on purpose. He undermines you in front of people who don't know any better. It's not fine." I leaned against the kitchen counter, staring out the window at the yard where my father was still laughing with his friends. "I don't know what you want me to do, Ethan. He's not going to change." "I'm not asking him to change. I'm asking you to stop pretending it doesn't bother you." I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't have a deflection ready. Because it did bother me. It had always bothered me. I'd just gotten so good at swallowing it down, at convincing myself it didn't matter, that I'd forgotten how much weight I was carrying. "I don't know how to make it stop," I admitted. "You don't have to make it stop," Ethan said. "You just have to stop letting it define you." That conversation stayed with me. It rattled something loose. Made me realize that I'd been living my entire life trying to earn my father's respect, and it was never going to happen. Not because I wasn't good enough, but because he decided a long time ago that I wasn't worth respecting. And no amount of achievement, no amount of sacrifice, no amount of bending over backward was going to change his mind. The week before the wedding, my father called to check in. It was late, and I was going over last-minute details with Ethan when my phone buzzed. "Hey, Dad. Just wanted to make sure you're not getting cold feet," he said, his tone light, almost teasing. "I'm not." "Good. Because it'd be embarrassing to cancel now. We've already told everyone." I bit the inside of my cheek. "We're not canceling." "Well, that's a relief." "I mean, Ethan seems nice enough. A little boring, maybe, but nice." "He's not boring." "If you say so. I just hope you know what you're doing." "I do." There was a pause. Then he said, "All right. See you Saturday." He hung up before I could respond. I set the phone down and looked at Ethan, who was watching me with quiet concern. "He's never going to support this," I said. "Not really." "I know. Then why does it still hurt?" Ethan reached for my hand. "Because he's your father. And you keep hoping he'll show up for you. But Sabrina, you don't need him to. You've already shown up for yourself." I wanted to believe that. I wanted to walk into that wedding with my head high, unbothered by my father's opinions. But deep down, I knew his voice would be there, in the back of my mind, waiting. The day of the wedding arrived clear and bright. The kind of day that feels almost too perfect, like the universe is holding its breath. I woke up early, nerves humming under my skin, and went through the motions: hair, makeup, dress. My mother was there, fluttering around, making sure everything was in place. She looked proud, emotional, like she'd been waiting for this moment as much as I had. My father, on the other hand, seemed distracted. He showed up late to the venue, complained about parking, and spent most of the pre-ceremony time on his phone. When my mother asked him to take a few photos with me, he sighed like it was an inconvenience. But I pushed it aside. This was my day, mine and Ethan's. I wasn't going to let my father's mood ruin it. The ceremony space was beautiful, simple but elegant. Rows of chairs filled with people I cared about: friends, family, colleagues from the squadron. Ethan stood at the front, looking calm and steady, and when our eyes met, I felt the knot in my chest loosen just a little. The processional started. My mother walked down the aisle, then the bridesmaids. Then it was my turn. My father offered me his arm, and we stepped forward together. I could feel his tension, the stiffness in his posture, but I focused on Ethan. On the way he smiled when he saw me. On the way everything else seemed to fall away. We reached the front. My father handed me off with a curt nod and took his seat. The officiant began. The words washed over me: love, commitment, partnership. All the things I'd wanted for so long. All the things I'd finally found. Then came the vows. Ethan went first. He spoke clearly, his voice steady and sure, and I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. When it was my turn, I took a breath and began. Ethan, I promised to stand beside you, and that's when my father's voice cut through the quiet. Are you sure you want to marry my fat, useless daughter? The words landed like a punch. The room went silent. A few people gasped. Some laughed nervously, unsure if it was a joke. I froze, my hands still holding Ethan's, my mind struggling to process what had just happened. My father was smirking, leaning back in his chair like he'd just delivered the punchline to a great joke. A few of his buddies chuckled. My mother's face went pale. Ethan's grip on my hands tightened. His jaw clenched, but he didn't move. Didn't speak. He was waiting for me, I realized. Waiting to see what I needed. But before I could find my voice, movement rippled through the groomsmen. They were all members of my squadron, people I'd served with, people I trusted. And they were standing. All of them. In unison. Lieutenant Alex Chin stepped forward. His voice was calm but firm, carrying across the room with unmistakable authority. Sir, he said, looking directly at my father. That's our commanding officer. The silence that followed was deafening. My father's smirk faltered. His face went from amused to confused to something close to panic as he looked around the room and saw the uniforms, the insignia, the unmistakable respect in the eyes of the people surrounding him. Sergeant Michael Alvarez spoke next, his tone just as steady. Captain Lewis has led our unit with integrity and skill. We're honored to be here. Lieutenant Commander Grace Nolan added, she's one of the finest officers we've served under. My father's face drained of color. He looked at me, then at the groomsmen, then back at me. For the first time in my life, I saw him at a loss for words. The officiant, to his credit, recovered quickly. Shall we continue? I nodded, my voice still caught in my throat. Ethan squeezed my hands again, grounding me. The ceremony resumed, but the atmosphere had shifted. The laughter was gone. The whispers had started. And my father sat in his seat, smaller somehow, his confidence shattered. I finished my vows. Ethan finished his. We exchanged rings. The officiant pronounced us married. And when Ethan kissed me, I felt a strange mix of triumph and sadness. Because I'd wanted this day to be perfect. I'd wanted it to be about love and hope and new beginnings. And my father had tried to make it about him. About his cruelty. About his need to diminish me. But he'd failed. Because the people who mattered, the people who really knew me, had stood up. They'd shown him, and everyone else in that room, exactly who I was. And for the first time, I didn't need his approval. I didn't need him to see me. Because I was already seen. The reception started, but the energy was off. People congratulated us, smiled, danced, but there was an undercurrent of tension. Whispers followed my father wherever he went. I saw my mother pull him aside at one point, her face tight with anger, but he brushed her off. He tried to laugh it off with his friends, but they weren't laughing. They looked uncomfortable. Embarrassed, even. Ethan stayed close to me all night. He didn't ask if I was okay, he knew I wasn't. But he didn't push. He just stayed beside me, a steady presence, reminding me that I wasn't alone. My squadron members found me during a quiet moment. Lieutenant Chin was the first to speak. "Captain, I hope that wasn't out of line." I shook my head, my throat tight. "It wasn't." "Thank you." "We meant every word," Sergeant Alvarez said. "You've earned our respect 100 times over. We weren't about to let anyone take that from you." Lieutenant Commander Nolan smiled. "Besides, someone needed to remind him who you really are." I blinked back tears. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't stepped in." "You would have handled it," Chin said. "You always do. But you shouldn't have to handle it alone." That broke something in me. For years, I'd carried everything by myself. I'd swallowed every insult, every dismissal, every cruel joke, and told myself it didn't matter. That I could rise above it. That I didn't need anyone's help. But standing there, surrounded by people who respected me, who saw me, I realized how much I'd needed this. How much I'd needed someone to stand up for me when I couldn't stand up for myself. "Thank you," I said again, my voice barely above a whisper. They nodded and stepped back, giving me space. Ethan pulled me onto the dance floor, and we moved together in silence, the music swelling around us. I rested my head against his shoulder and let myself feel everything I'd been holding back, the humiliation, the anger, the relief, the gratitude. "I'm sorry," I murmured. "For what?" "For him. For what he said. For ruining our day." Ethan pulled back just enough to look at me. "He didn't ruin anything. He showed everyone exactly who he is. And your squadron showed everyone who you are. That's not ruin. That's clarity." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to let go of the shame that was still clinging to me, the feeling that somehow I should have seen this coming, that I should have done something to prevent it. But maybe Ethan was right. Maybe this wasn't about me at all. Maybe my father had spent so long trying to make me feel small that he'd forgotten other people could see through him. And today they had. Later, my mother found me in a quiet corner. She looked exhausted, her makeup smudged, her hands twisting together. "Sabrina, I'm so sorry." I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure what to say. "I should have stopped him," she continued. "I should have said something years ago. I kept thinking if I smoothed things over, if I kept the peace, it would get better. But it didn't. It just got worse." "Why didn't you ever stand up to him?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. She flinched. "I don't know. Fear, maybe. Habit." I convinced myself that it was easier to go along than to fight. "But I see now that my silence hurt you. And I'm sorry." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone who'd been worn down by years of trying to manage an impossible situation. Someone who'd lost herself in the process. "I don't blame you," I said finally. "But I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending that his behavior is okay. That it doesn't hurt." "I know," she said. "And I don't expect you to. I just wanted you to know that I'm proud of you. I've always been proud of you." I should have said it more. I nodded, my chest tight. "Thank you." She hugged me, and I let her. But I also knew that something had shifted. I couldn't go back to the way things were. I couldn't keep sacrificing my own peace to keep everyone else comfortable. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Ethan and I smiled for photos, cut the cake, danced with guests. But my mind was elsewhere, turning over everything that had happened. My father left early, slipping out without saying goodbye. My mother stayed, trying to make amends, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. When it was finally over, Ethan and I retreated to our hotel room. I collapsed onto the bed, still in my dress, staring at the ceiling. "I keep replaying it," I said, over and over, wondering if I should have said something. "If I should have, you don't have to wonder," Ethan interrupted gently. "You didn't do anything wrong." He did. And now everyone knows it. But what if they don't? What if they think I'm weak? that I can't even stand up to my own father. Ethan sat beside me, his hand resting on mine. Sabrina, your squadron stood up for you. Not because they think you're weak, but because they know you're strong. And they wanted to make sure your father knew it too. I closed my eyes, letting his words sink in. For so long, I'd equated strength with silence, with enduring, with never letting anyone see how much it hurt. But maybe strength was also about letting people in, about accepting support, about recognizing when someone else's behavior was the problem, not my reaction to it. I don't want him in my life anymore, I said quietly. Not like this. Then he won't be. It sounds so simple when you say it. It's not simple, Ethan said. But it's necessary. And you're not doing it alone. I turned to look at him, this man who'd stood beside me through everything, who'd never once made me feel like I was asking for too much. I love you. I love you too. We stayed there for a long time, the weight of the day settling over us. And for the first time, I felt something shift inside me. Not closure exactly, but the beginning of it. The understanding that I didn't need my father's approval to be whole. That I'd been enough all along. The days after the wedding were strange. We went on our honeymoon, a quiet trip to the coast where we could decompress and just be together. But even in that peaceful space, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. About the look on my father's face when my squadron stood up. About the whispers that had followed him for the rest of the night. Ethan was patient. He didn't push me to talk when I wasn't ready. He just stayed close, a quiet reminder that I wasn't alone. When we got back, I made a decision. I called my mother and told her that I needed space from my father. That I wasn't going to keep pretending everything was fine. That I wasn't going to keep funding his lifestyle or chasing his approval. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I understand. Do you? I asked. Because you've spent years defending him. Making excuses for him. I have, she admitted. And I was wrong. I see that now. I don't know how to fix it. You can't fix it, I said. Not for me. But you can decide what you're willing to tolerate. And I've decided I'm done. After that call, I blocked my father's number. I stopped sending money. I stopped checking in. I drew a line and I held it. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I second-guessed myself. When I wondered if I was being too harsh, too unforgiving. But then I'd remember his voice during my vows. The way he'd tried to humiliate me in front of everyone I cared about. And I'd remember that I deserved better. My squadron noticed the change in me. I was lighter somehow. More present. Lieutenant Chin asked me about it one day after a briefing. You seem different, Captain. Different how? I don't know. Freer, maybe? I smiled. I stopped carrying something that wasn't mine to carry. He nodded, understanding without needing details. Good for you. Work became a refuge. I threw myself into my responsibilities, into leading my team, into doing the job I loved. And for the first time, I wasn't doing it to prove anything to anyone. I was doing it because it mattered to me. Ethan and I settled into married life. We found rhythms, built routines, learned how to be partners in every sense of the word. He never once made me feel like I'd made the wrong choice by cutting off my father. He just supported me, the way he always had. My mother and I stayed in touch, but the relationship was different. She was caught between wanting to support me and not wanting to alienate my father. I didn't envy her position, but I also didn't let it pull me back into the dysfunction. One afternoon, she called to tell me that my father had been asking about me. What did you tell him? I asked. That you needed space. That he hurt you. And what did he say? She hesitated. He said you were being dramatic. That it was just a joke. I wasn't surprised. It wasn't a joke, Mom. And if he can't see that, then there's nothing left to say. He's struggling, she said quietly. Without your help, things have been hard. That's not my responsibility. I know. I just thought you should know. After we hung up, I sat with that information. Part of me felt guilty. Part of me felt vindicated. But mostly, I just felt tired. Tired of being the one who had to bend. Tired of being the one who had to forgive without ever receiving an apology. Weeks passed. Then months. My father didn't reach out. My mother kept me updated, carefully, cautiously. She told me that his friends had started pulling away. That people had been talking about the wedding. that his reputation, which he'd always cared so much about, had taken a hit. I didn't take pleasure in it, but I didn't feel guilty either. He'd spent years mocking me, dismissing me, tearing me down. And now, finally, people were seeing him for who he really was. Meanwhile, I was thriving. I received a promotion. My squadron continued to perform at the highest level. Ethan and I talked about the future, about maybe starting a family, about buying a house, about all the things we wanted to build together. One evening, as we sat on the couch, Ethan asked, "Do you ever think about reconciling with him?" I considered the question. Sometimes. But then I remembered that reconciliation requires two people. And he's never once apologized. He's never once acknowledged what he did. Do you think he ever will? I don't know. Maybe. But I'm not going to wait around hoping for it. Ethan nodded. That's fair. I spent so much of my life trying to earn his respect, I said. And I finally realized that I don't need it. I have respect from the people who matter. From my team. From you. From myself. That's enough. More than enough, Ethan said, pulling me close. And in that moment, I believed it. I believed that I'd made the right choice. That I'd chosen myself, my peace, my future. And that was worth more than any relationship built on obligation and pain. Time has a way of softening things. Not erasing them, but making them easier to carry. A year after the wedding, I found myself in a place I hadn't expected, steady, content, no longer waiting for the other shoe to drop. Ethan and I had built a life that felt solid. We'd bought a small house near base, filled it with things that mattered to us, and learned how to navigate the everyday challenges of marriage with patience and humor. My career continued to move forward. I was given more responsibilities, more autonomy. My squadron respected me, trusted me, and I worked hard to earn that trust every single day. The wedding incident faded into the background, though it was never fully forgotten. Every now and then, someone would reference it, usually with a kind of quiet solidarity, a reminder that they'd stood with me when it mattered. My father remained absent. My mother and I spoke occasionally, but the conversations were careful. She'd tell me about her life, about the small things happening in their world, but she rarely mentioned him directly. When she did, it was with a kind of weariness, like she was tired of defending him, but didn't know how to stop. Then, about 18 months after the wedding, I got a call. It was my mother, and her voice was shaky. "Sabrina, your father had a heart attack." My stomach dropped. "Is he okay?" "He's stable. They're keeping him in the hospital for observation." But it was close. I didn't know what to feel. Relief that he was alive. Anger that even now he was pulling me back into his orbit. Fear that I'd regret it if something happened and I hadn't tried one more time. "Do you want me to come?" I asked. "Only if you want to," she said. "I'm not going to pressure you." I told her I'd think about it, and after we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. Ethan found me there, staring out the window. "What do you need?" he asked. "I don't know. Part of me thinks I should go. That maybe this is the moment where he finally sees things clearly. But another part of me thinks it's just going to be more of the same." "What does your gut say?" I closed my eyes. "That I'll regret it if I don't at least try. But I'm scared." "Then I'll come with you." We drove to the hospital the next day. My mother met us in the waiting area, looking older and more fragile than I remembered. She hugged me tightly, whispering thank you over and over. "He's awake," she said. "He knows you're here." I nodded, my heart pounding. Ethan squeezed my hand, and we walked into the room together. My father looked small in the hospital bed. Pale, tired, hooked up to machines that beeped softly in the background. He looked at me when I entered, and for a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or regret. "Sabrina," he said, his voice rough. "Hi, Dad." He glanced at Ethan, then back at me. "You came." I did. There was a long silence. My mother hovered near the door, uncertain. Ethan stayed by my side, solid and quiet. "I thought you might not," my father said finally. I almost didn't. He nodded slowly, like he understood. Like he knew exactly why. I've had a lot of time to think. Lying here, realizing I could have died. And I kept my voice neutral, not willing to give him anything until I knew where this was going. I was wrong. About a lot of things. The words came out stiff, unpracticed. Like he'd never said them before. What I said at your wedding. That was wrong. I waited. There had to be more. I don't know why I said it, he continued. I thought it was funny. I thought people would laugh. I didn't think about how it would make you feel. You never do, I said quietly. Think about how I feel. He flinched. I know. Do you? I stepped closer to the bed, my hands clenched at my sides. Because you've spent my entire life making me feel like I'm not good enough. Like nothing I do will ever matter. And I'm tired, Dad. I'm tired of waiting for you to see me. I see you now. Now? After a heart attack? After you humiliated me in front of everyone I care about? That's when you finally see me. He looked away, his jaw tight. I was jealous. That stopped me. What? You did everything right. You got the scholarship. You built a career. You're respected. You have a good man who loves you. And I watched all of that happen, and I felt like you didn't need me anymore. Like I was irrelevant. I stared at him, trying to process what he'd just said. So you tore me down. Because you felt irrelevant. I didn't know what else to do. You could have been proud of me, I said, my voice breaking. You could have supported me. You could have been my father. I know. His eyes were wet now, and I'd never seen my father cry. Not once. I know, and I'm sorry. I don't know if that means anything to you, but I'm sorry. I wanted to feel relief. I wanted this apology to fix something, to heal all the years of damage. But it didn't. Because words, even sincere ones, couldn't erase what he'd done. They couldn't give me back the childhood I'd spent trying to earn his love. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said honestly. I'm not asking you to, he replied. I just wanted you to know that I was wrong. That you deserved better. That you've always deserved better. Ethan's hand found mine, anchoring me. My mother was crying softly by the door. If you want a relationship with me, I said carefully, it has to be different. No more jokes at my expense. No more criticism disguised as concern. No more making me feel small so you can feel big. I understand. I mean it, Dad. If you can't respect me, then I'm done. For good. I'll do better, he said. I promise. I wanted to believe him. Part of me desperately wanted to believe that this moment would change everything. But I'd learned not to try, for the way he never tried to fix things or push me toward forgiveness. He just let me feel what I needed to feel. Over the next few months, my father and I had sporadic contact. He called occasionally, awkward conversations where he asked about work and tried to sound interested. He didn't make jokes at my expense. He didn't criticize. It felt strange, like we were both learning how to talk to each other for the first time. My mother said he was trying. That he'd been different since the heart attack. More reflective. Less combative. I didn't know if it would last, but I appreciated the effort. One evening, he called and asked if Ethan and I would come to dinner. Just the four of us. I want to do this right, he said. I want to try. I agreed, cautiously. When we arrived, the house felt different. Quieter. My father greeted us at the door, shaking Ethan's hand, telling him it was good to see him. It was stilted, but it was genuine. Dinner was simple. My mother had made my favorite meal, and we ate and talked about safe topics, work, the house, plans for the holidays. My father didn't dominate the conversation. He asked questions. He listened. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As we were leaving, he walked us to the door. Thank you for coming, he said. I know I don't deserve another chance. But I'm grateful you're giving me one. I'm not promising anything, I said. But I'm willing to see where this goes. He nodded. That's more than I deserve. On the drive home, Ethan asked, think he'll keep it up? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe he'll slip back into old patterns. But at least now I know I can walk away if I need to. You've always known that. I know. But now I believe it. The months that followed weren't easy. There were moments when my father reverted to old habits, a cutting remark here, a dismissive comment there. But when I called him on it, he apologized. And slowly, painstakingly, we found a new rhythm. One built on boundaries and honesty instead of obligation and resentment. It wasn't the relationship I'd wanted as a child. It wasn't the kind of bond where I could call him for advice or lean on him when things got hard. But it was something. And for now, that was enough. Years passed. Ethan and I celebrated anniversaries, navigated deployments, built a life that felt more solid with each passing season. I made lieutenant colonel. My squadron continued to excel. I found fulfillment in my work, in the people I led, in the knowledge that I was making a difference. My father and I maintained a careful distance. We saw each other a few times a year, holidays, birthdays, the occasional dinner. The conversations were cordial, sometimes even warm. He asked about my career with what seemed like genuine interest. He complimented Ethan. He never made another joke at my expense. But I never forgot what it had taken to get here. I never forgot the years of mockery, the wedding, the way he'd tried to shrink me down to make himself feel bigger. And I never let my guard down completely. Because I'd learned that people could change their behavior without changing who they fundamentally were. And my father was still the man who'd chosen cruelty over kindness for most of my life. My mother seemed lighter, though. Less burdened. She told me once, over coffee, that she'd started standing up to him more. That she'd stopped making excuses for his behavior. That she was trying to find herself again after years of losing herself in him. "I'm proud of you," she said. "For setting boundaries. For not letting him walk all over you." "I wish you'd done it sooner," I said gently. "So do I. But I'm doing it now. That has to count for something." It did count. And watching her reclaim pieces of herself gave me hope that people could grow, even late in life. Ethan and I started talking seriously about having kids. It was a conversation that scared me, not because I didn't want children, but because I worried about what kind of grandparents my parents would be. Whether my father would treat my children the way he'd treated me. "We'll protect them," Ethan said. "The same way we protect ourselves. We'll set boundaries. And if he crosses them, he's out." You make it sound so simple. It's not simple. But it's necessary. And we'll do it together. That confidence, that certainty that we could handle whatever came, made me believe that maybe it would be okay. That maybe I could give my children something I'd never had, a family where respect wasn't conditional. One afternoon, I got a call from Lieutenant Chin. He'd been promoted, transferred to a new assignment, but we stayed in touch. He told me he'd been asked to speak at a leadership conference, and he wanted to tell the story of the wedding. "I want to talk about what it means to stand up for the people you lead," he said. "About how leadership isn't just about rank. It's about respect." And I can't think of a better example than what happened that day. I was quiet for a moment, processing. "You really want to share that?" "With your permission, yes. Because I think people need to hear it. They need to understand that leadership is built on mutual respect. And that when someone tries to tear down a leader, the team has a responsibility to stand up." "You have my permission," I said. "Just don't make me sound like a victim." "I'm not. I wouldn't dream of it, Captain. You're one of the strongest people I know." After we hung up, I sat with that. The idea that something so painful, so humiliating, could become a teaching moment. That it could help someone else. It didn't erase what had happened, but it gave it meaning. And that felt like a kind of justice. Ethan and I eventually decided to start trying for a family. It took time, but eventually I got pregnant. When I told my parents, my mother cried. My father smiled, a real smile, and said, "Congratulations. You're going to be a great mother." It was a simple statement, but it meant something. Because he'd never said anything like that to me before. He'd never expressed confidence in my abilities, never acknowledged that I might be good at something. "Thank you," I said. "I mean it," he added. "I know I wasn't the best father. But maybe I can be a better grandfather." "Maybe," I said. "We'll see." I wasn't ready to give him unconditional access to my child. Not yet. But I was willing to see if he'd really changed. If the man who'd tried to humiliate me at my wedding could become someone my child could trust. Months later, I gave birth to a daughter. We named her Emma. She was perfect, tiny and fierce and full of life. When my parents came to visit, my father held her carefully, like she was made of glass. "She looks like you," he said quietly. "She does. I hope she has your strength." I looked at him, this man who'd spent so much of my life trying to convince me I was weak. "She will. Because I'll make sure of it." He nodded, understanding. "Good." Watching him with Emma, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, exactly. Not absolution. but maybe the beginning of acceptance. The understanding that people were complicated, that they could hurt you deeply and still be capable of growth, that you could hold space for both the pain they'd caused and the possibility that they might do better. My father wasn't perfect. He still had moments where old patterns surfaced. But he tried. And in those moments when he held my daughter, when he spoke to her gently, when he looked at me with something that resembled pride, I saw glimpses of the father I'd always wanted. It didn't erase the past. It didn't make up for the years of hurt. But it was something. And I'd learned to find peace in something rather than holding out for everything. Emma grew. She crawled, then walked, then ran. She laughed easily and loved fiercely, and watching her navigate the world with such confidence filled me with a kind of joy I'd never known. Ethan was an incredible father, patient, present, endlessly supportive. We built a home where Emma felt safe to be herself, where her worth wasn't conditional, where she never had to earn our love. My career continued to evolve. I took on new challenges, led larger teams, made decisions that impacted hundreds of people. The work was demanding, but it mattered. And I'd learned to balance it with the rest of my life, to set boundaries that protected my time with my family. My father remained a peripheral figure. He was there for birthdays and holidays, but he wasn't deeply involved. And that was okay. I'd stopped expecting him to be someone he wasn't. I'd stopped waiting for him to fill the role I'd always wanted him to play. One afternoon, when Emma was about 3, we were at my parents' house for a family dinner. Emma was playing in the yard, and my father was watching her from the porch. I joined him, and we stood in silence for a while. "She's a happy kid," he said. "She is. You're doing a good job." "Thank you." He glanced at me. Better than I did. I didn't argue. I learned what not to do. He winced, but didn't look away. "I deserve that." "You do." We stood there, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between us. Then he said, "I think about that day at your wedding a lot. About what I said. About how I tried to humiliate you. I think about it too. I wish I could take it back. You can't. But you can keep trying to do better now." "Is it working?" he asked. "Am I doing better?" I considered the question. "Sometimes. Not always. But you're trying. And that's more than you used to do." He nodded, accepting the honesty. "I want to be someone she's proud to know. Your daughter. I don't want her to grow up thinking her grandfather is." He stopped, struggling for words. "A bully," I supplied. "Yeah, then don't be one. It's that simple." "It's not simple for me." "I know. But that's your work to do, not mine." Emma ran up to us then, breathless and grinning, holding a dandelion she'd picked. "Look, Mama. I made a wish." I knelt down, pulling her close. "What did you wish for?" "I can't tell you, or it won't come true." My father smiled, a genuine smile, and for a moment, I saw something I'd never seen before: softness. Vulnerability. The realization that he was running out of time to be the person he wanted to be. Later, as Ethan and I drove home with Emma asleep in the back seat, he asked, "How was it?" "Okay. Not perfect. But okay. That's progress." "It is." "Do you think you'll ever fully forgive him?" I thought about it. I don't know. Maybe forgiveness isn't the point. Maybe the point is that I've built a life where his opinion doesn't define me anymore. Where I'm not waiting for him to validate me. Where I'm just living and he's either part of it or he's not. And right now, he's part of it. In a limited way. And I'm okay with that. Ethan reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you. For everything you've done. For the way you've handled all of this. I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have. But I'm glad you didn't have to." I looked out the window at the passing landscape, at the life we'd built, at the future we were creating for our daughter. And I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Not the kind that came from resolution or closure, but the kind that came from knowing I'd done the work. That I'd set boundaries. That I'd chosen myself. My father would never be the dad I'd wanted as a child. He'd never be the person who lifted me up or celebrated my successes without reservation. But he was trying, in his own limited way, to be better. And I'd learned that sometimes that had to be enough. Because the truth was, I didn't need him anymore. Not the way I used to. I had a partner who respected me, A daughter who adored me. A career that fulfilled me. A squadron that trusted me. I had built a life on my own terms, and no one, not my father, not anyone, could take that away. That day at my wedding, when my father tried to make me small, everyone saw who I really was. They saw the leader. The officer. The woman who'd earned her place through hard work and integrity. And in that moment, I stopped needing his approval. I stopped waiting for him to see me, because I already saw myself. And that was enough. Time moved forward the way it always does, steadily, without pause, without asking permission. Emma started school. Ethan and I celebrated our 10th anniversary. I made full colonel, a promotion I'd worked toward for years. My squadron threw me a small celebration, and standing there, surrounded by people who respected me, I felt the full weight of how far I'd come. My father called to congratulate me when he heard about the promotion. The call was brief, but his pride seemed genuine. "That's a big deal," he said. "You should be proud." "I am," I replied. "Your mother and I would like to take you and Ethan to dinner. To celebrate." I hesitated, old instincts flaring. But then I thought about the years that had passed, about the careful progress we'd made, and I agreed. The dinner was pleasant. My father didn't make any cutting remarks. He asked thoughtful questions about my new responsibilities. He told stories about his own work that weren't centered on tearing someone else down. It felt almost normal. Almost. My mother pulled me aside as we were leaving. "He's different with you now," she said. "I know it doesn't erase everything. But he's trying." "I know he is." "Are you happy?" she asked suddenly. "Really happy?" I thought about my life, the marriage that felt like partnership, the daughter who filled our home with laughter, the career that challenged and fulfilled me. "Yes," I said. "I am." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "Good. That's all I ever wanted for you. I wish you'd wanted it for yourself too." "I'm working on it," she said. "Better late than never, right?" "Right." As we drove home that night, I reflected on how much had changed. How I'd gone from a woman desperate for her father's approval to someone who no longer needed it. How I'd built a life defined by my own choices, my own values, my own sense of worth. My father would always be a complicated figure in my life. Someone who'd caused deep hurt, but who was also capable of growth, however slow and imperfect. I'd learned to hold both truths at once, that he'd failed me in fundamental ways, and that he was trying, now, to do better. But more importantly, I'd learned that his failures didn't define me. That I could be strong and successful and loved without his validation. That respect wasn't something you inherited or begged for, it was something you earned through your actions, your integrity, your commitment to being better than the worst things done to you. Emma asked me once, when she was about 7, if Grandpa had always been nice to me. I'd paused, considering how to answer. "No," I said honestly. "He wasn't always kind. He said things that hurt me." "Why?" "I don't know, sweetheart. Sometimes people hurt others because they're hurting themselves. It doesn't make it okay, but it helps to understand." "Did you forgive him?" "I'm still figuring that out," I admitted. But I decided that I wouldn't let his mistakes stop me from being happy. And that's been the most important thing. She'd nodded, processing, then hugged me tight. "I think you're brave, Mama." "Thank you, baby. And I think you're the best mom ever." That moment stayed with me. Because it reminded me what I was building, a different kind of family. One where love wasn't conditional. Where children didn't have to earn their parents' approval. Where mistakes were acknowledged and repaired, not ignored or minimized. My career continued to flourish. I was given command of a larger unit, more responsibility, more opportunities to lead. The work was demanding, but I'd learned how to balance it with the rest of my life. How to be present for my family while still giving my best to my team. Lieutenant Chin, now a captain himself, stayed in touch. He'd used the wedding story in his presentation, and it had resonated with his audience. He told me later that several young officers had approached him afterward, sharing their own stories of standing up for leaders who'd been disrespected. "You started something," he'd said. "You showed people that it matters." I didn't know about starting something, but I knew that my squadron had given me a gift that day, the gift of being seen, of being defended, of knowing that I wasn't alone. And in my own leadership, I tried to give that same gift to others. To create environments where people felt valued, where respect flowed both ways, where no one had to shrink themselves to fit someone else's expectations. Years continued to pass. My parents aged. My father's health remained precarious, a reminder of his mortality. My mother grew more independent, more willing to speak her mind. Their relationship shifted too, becoming something more equitable, less one-sided. One evening, my father called me. His voice was different, softer, more uncertain. "I've been thinking," he said, "about everything. About how I treated you. And I wanted to say, properly, that I'm sorry. Not just for the wedding. For all of it. For making you feel like you had to earn my love. For not being the father you deserved." I was quiet, letting his words settle. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he continued. "I don't even know if I deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. And I'm sorry." "Thank you," I said finally. "That means something." "Does it mean enough?" "I don't know. But it's a start." We talked for a while longer, about small things, comfortable things. And when we hung up, I felt something release in my chest. Not complete healing, that might never come. But a kind of letting go. An acceptance that this was as good as it would get, and that maybe, just maybe, that was okay. Because I'd learned that you couldn't force people to be who you needed them to be. You could only decide what you were willing to accept, what boundaries you needed to protect yourself, and what kind of person you wanted to be regardless of what others chose. I chose strength. I chose integrity. I chose to build a life where respect was foundational, where love was freely given, where no one had to prove their worth. And in making those choices, I found something I'd been searching for my entire life, not my father's approval, but my own. The understanding that I was enough, exactly as I was. That I'd always been enough. That day at my wedding, when my father tried to make me small, everyone saw who I really was. They saw the leader, the officer, the woman who'd earned her place through hard work and dedication. And in that moment, something fundamental shifted. I stopped needing external validation. I stopped waiting for someone else to tell me I mattered. Because I already knew. And that knowledge, that deep, unshakable certainty of my own worth, became the foundation of everything that followed. Respect isn't inherited. It's earned. And I stopped letting anyone else decide mine. My life is defined by my choices, not by my father's laughter. By the family I've built, the people I've led, the love I've given and received. And in the end, that's the only legacy that matters, not what was done to me, but what I chose to do despite it. I chose myself. And I've never regretted it. Emma graduated high school with honors. Watching her walk across that stage, confident and self-assured, I felt something complete inside me. She'd grown up knowing she was valued, knowing her voice mattered, knowing she never had to shrink herself to make someone else comfortable. That was the legacy I'd wanted to give her. That was the cycle I'd broken. My father was there that day, sitting beside my mother in the audience. He was friendlier now, his hair completely white, his movements slower. But when Emma's name was called, he stood and applauded. And when she found us afterward, diploma in hand, he hugged her and told her he was proud. "You're going to do great things," he said to her. "I learned from the best," Emma replied, looking at me. My father's eyes met mine over Emma's shoulder. There was understanding there. Acknowledgement. He knew who she meant. Later, at the celebration dinner, Emma announced she'd been accepted to the Air Force Academy. The same path I'd taken. The same scholarship I'd earned. I felt my throat tighten with pride and something else, the recognition that she'd chosen this not because she had to prove herself, but because she wanted to serve. "Following in your mom's footsteps," Ethan said, beaming. "More like making my own path," Emma corrected with a smile. "But yeah, Mom showed me it was possible." My father was quiet through most of the dinner. But as we were leaving, he pulled me aside. "I wish I'd known how to be proud of you back then," he said. "The way you are with her. The way you've always shown up for her." "You can't change the past," I said. "I know. But watching you with Emma, watching the kind of parent you became, I see what I missed. What I threw away because I was too stubborn and too stupid to see what I had." I looked at this old man, my father, who'd caused me so much pain and who'd spent his last years trying to make amends. He'd never be the dad I'd needed as a child. but he'd become someone who could acknowledge his failures. And in its own way, that mattered. "You're here now," I said simply. "That counts for something." He nodded, his eyes wet. "Thank you for not giving up on me completely." "I didn't do it for you," I said honestly. "I did it for me. Because I needed to know I'd tried. That I'd given you every chance to be better." "And did I get better?" I considered the question. "You got better enough. Not perfect, but enough." He smiled sadly. "I'll take it." We rejoined the family, and I watched as Emma laughed with Ethan, as my mother fussed over the dessert, as my father sat quietly, present but not dominating. This was my family, imperfect, complicated, but mine. And I'd built a life where that was enough. Where I didn't need perfect. Where I just needed honest effort, clear boundaries, and the freedom to choose who I wanted to be. I chose strength. I chose peace. I chose me. And I'd never looked back. That was my line in the sand, and I don't regret drawing it. If this hit home, like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs it. Your turn. Have you ever been publicly undermined by family? What happened? What boundary did you set, and how did people react? If it was at a milestone event, wedding, graduation, promotion, what would you do differently now? What's one thing you wish someone had said or done for you in that moment? Any advice for someone facing a similar choice today? Drop your answers in the comments, I'm reading them.